So I was this close to giving up on Cardano last week. ADA's price was tanking and I felt like the universe was telling me to cut my losses and run. But then, almost by accident, I stumbled onto a series of clues that changed everything. Clues that had me convinced something big might be brewing for ADA. And when I say big, I mean the kind of plot twist that could turn this 8% weekly drop into a rally straight past $1. So, picture this. It's midnight. I'm doom scrolling through my portfolio and ADA is sitting at around 73 cents, down roughly 8% for the week. Now my confidence is shaken. I'm thinking, why on earth am I holding this coin that just keeps sliding? Now you know that feeling when you're watching something that you believe in just bled red. That was me, right? Nervously sipping cold coffee, contemplating hitting the sell button. But a little voice in my head, probably the part of me that's stubborn as a mule, said, hang on for a second. If you sell now, you're selling at the bottom. Why don't you just at least want to know why all of this is happening? And it was a fair point, tiny stubborn little voice. So instead of panic selling, I went into detective mode. And let me tell you, what I found made me sit up like I just chugged a double espresso. First off, I noticed something weird in the data. While ADA's price was sagging, the action around it was kind of nuts. Trading volume in kind of derivatives market, basically all the futures and options bets people make on ADA, it shot up over 36% to around $1.49 billion. That's a lot of people suddenly interested in betting on ADA's future price. Meanwhile, the total open interest, so think of that as all the bets still on the table, barely even changed, down like 0.03% to $1.27 billion. So, in other words, a ton of new bets were coming in, but people weren't closing their old ones either. And it's kind of like as if the traders are actually doubling down, not backing off. Kind of makes you wonder, right? And get this, Cardano's DeFi scene, you know, all those kind of lending apps, staking, liquidity pools, was quietly growing amidst the price drop too. The total value locked on Cardano's ecosystem actually climbed to around $335 million, showing that more money was actually being parked in Cardano's network, not less. So here I am, right, scratching my head. Price is down, but usage and speculative interest is up. It kind of felt like finding pieces of a puzzle that didn't quite fit the Cardano is dead narrative or anything. In fact, if anything, it kind of hinted at something big was actually on the horizon. By now, I should say, my curiosity was fully piqued, right? Why are traders so hot on ADA all of a sudden? Why is there more money pouring into Cardano's ecosystem despite the price dip? There had to be reasons behind this, concrete ones, not just kind of blind hope, right? So I did what any sensible crypto holder does when they're confused. I jumped into a community chatter to see what the real ones, you know, or the trolls were saying. So I popped into our free educational Discord server, shameless plug. The invite link is in the description down below, right? And if you want to kind of join, of course, the community. Now, the chat, of course, there was buzzing. Some people were memeing about ADA to $1. Others were kind of more cautious. But a few messages caught my eye. People were tossing around words like midnight and Glacier and hyping up something about an airdrop. I'm like, midnight, Glacier? Did I step into Frozen sequel? Or is there still something about Cardano? Turns out Midnight and Glacier are very much about Cardano, and they were my first big clue. So, Midnight. Not the time of day, I mean Cardano's mysterious new sidechain project. Now, when I first heard about Midnight, I half expected a vampire or werewolf to be involved, but it's actually even cooler and far more real. Midnight is a privacy-focused sidechain that the Cardano team has been cooking up using, fancy zero-knowledge cryptography. Basically, it's like Cardano's stealthy twin. It lets you run smart contracts and DeFi stuff, but with a cloak of confidentiality. Imagine doing business on the blockchain without broadcasting all of your moves to the world. Well, that is what midnight promises. Now, why does this matter for ADA holders like us? Well, the founder of Cardano, Charles Hoskinson, called midnight the single biggest economic event in the history of Cardano. No joke, the biggest ever. Coming from the guy who created Cardano and co-founded Ethereum, that is a statement that grabs your attention. And it's not just talk. There's a huge event tied to midnight that's about to drop. Quite literally. Enter the Glacier airdrop. Now, I started seeing chatter about the Glacier drop, and I'm immediately intrigued, and maybe just a tiny little bit skeptical. I mean, who doesn't love free tokens falling from the sky? But there's always a catch, right? Well, here's the scoop. Cardano is gearing up to give away a whopping 24 billion, and yes, that was with a B, of these new Night tokens as part of the midnight launch. 24 billion. That's like opera level generosity. You get some tokens, you get some tokens, everybody gets some tokens. And when I say everybody, I'm not far off. Over 37 million users are apparently eligible for this airdrop, and it started just a few days ago. And it's across 8 different blockchains. It's not just Cardano diehards either, right? They're including people over that hold Bitcoin, Ethereum, XRP, Solana, BNB, Avalanche, and even the basic attention token. But of course, Cardano ADA holders, they get the biggest slice of the pie. Or, as I should say, it should be, right? That's exactly how it should be. Half of those Night tokens, 12 billion of them, are reserved for us ADA holders. About 20% is earmarked for Bitcoin holders, and the rest gets sprinkled among the other network communities. Now, if you're like me, hearing about a multi-chain airdrop this massive sets off a few emotions. First is FOMO. I better not miss out on this one. Second is confusion. How on earth are they actually managing that airdrop across 8 different chains? And third is hype, right? Because an event like this can draw a lot of attention to Cardano, and people might actually be buying ADA just to make sure that they qualify for the airdrop. It's like an all-you-can-eat buffet, even if you weren't hungry, right? When you see that kind of spread, you grab a plate. All right, so midnight and the Glacier airdrop. That's clue number 1. A brand new sidechain, a flood of new tokens, and potentially a whole new wave of users and developers flocking to Cardano if this thing delivers everything that it promises. Now, in plain English, this could be big for ADA, even if half of the people who get those Night tokens just cash them out. There's a lot of them that will probably have interacted with Cardano to do just that, which, shines a spotlight on the ecosystem. And if midnight truly, brings something unique, privacy and cross-chain magic, it could give Cardano a serious edge. Now, at this point, I'm thinking, okay, that's one heck of a reason for optimism. What else have you got? Turns out the next clue was hiding in the money, big money. So I pulled up some news on institutional investing, and I nearly did a spit take with my coffee. Apparently, while us retail people were sweating bullets, the big dogs were quietly piling into ADA. Now, according to the data, about $73 million of institutional money has flowed into Cardano-focused funds just in 2025 so far. That was 73 million. That's not chump change, right? And when the suits start throwing that kind of cash at ADA, you know that they're seeing something long term. Now, this influx of institutional money isn't just random either. It's a part of why people are even whispering, about the possibility of a US listed Cardano ETF. And yeah, you heard that one right. An exchange traded fund just for Cardano, something that you could potentially buy in regular brokerage accounts someday, right? Grayscale, the big asset manager that made Bitcoin Trust, has reportedly filed for a Cardano ADA ETF, and the SEC is expected to review it by October of 2025. Now, an ETF approval is by no means guaranteed, right? The SEC is like the ultra strict teacher who kind of fails half of the class. But just the fact that it's on the table tells us that there's serious demand and confidence in ADA's future. Now, institutional investors, they love to do deep research before they commit. So what's attracting them to Cardano then? From what I gather, it's Cardano's core strengths. The network is built to handle a growing number of users and transactions without breaking a sweat. It's secure, the tech is peer-reviewed and focused on safety, and it's sustainable. No crazy energy-guzzling mining. Cardano uses a proof-of-stake system that's more eco-friendly. In kind of non-buzzword terms, Cardano is trying to be the tortoise that wins the race. Slow and steady improvements that could pay off big in the long run. And the institutional folk, they seem to like that. Now, here is where things get even more interesting. Cardano's development team, Input Output Global, IOG, basically the wizards writing Cardano's code, just got the green light to pull 96 million ADA from Cardano's Treasury for development. 96 million ADA. Now, at current prices, that's around $71 million, give or take. Now, this isn't coming from a VC or a bank loan. This is directly from Cardano's on-chain treasury, which is kind of like a community-governed war chest of funds just for development. And the community approved this spend. So what are they actually going to do with that hefty $71 million, you might be thinking? Well, they've laid out a 12-month plan to supercharge Cardano's growth, and they're not wasting any time. First up, you've got scaling solutions. Now, you might have heard of Hydra. No, not the villain from Marvel, but Cardano's layer 2 protocol that's supposed to make the network insanely fast by handling transactions off-chain and then settling them on-chain. So think of Hydra like adding extra lanes to a highway so that you can avoid traffic jams. Now, if Cardano can implement that smoothly, it can handle a ton more activity without breaking a sweat, which could put a huge, or at least could be and would be, in fact, a huge boost if usage actually keeps on growing, right? They're also kind of pouring money into improving developer tools and experience, right? One pain point from any kind of blockchain is getting devs to actually build on it. So better tools, documentation, maybe some mentorship programs. All of that can make building on Cardano as easy as assembling IKEA furniture. Okay, bad example. IKEA can be pretty rough, right? How about those as easy as kind of making instant noodles maybe, right? Now you kind of get the idea here. Lower further friction, attract more projects. Another part of the plan is something called Project, 𝗗𝗶𝘀𝗰𝗍, right? Probably butchered the name, I apologize. Which kind of sounds a bit like a code name, I guess, straight out of a spy movie. But from what I've heard, it's about making it easier to actually onboard new users and projects onto Cardano, possibly through better interfaces and sidechains, or who knows. Like, they keep these kind of descriptions pretty high level. But essentially, it's about growth, more users, more adoption. And since everything in crypto is slowly becoming a team sport, cross-chain compatibility is also a focus. Now, Cardano doesn't just want to be an island. It's actually looking to connect with other networks so that they can all play nice together. Now, we'll be talking more about that in a second because, spoiler, I found a wild example of it actually happening with Bitcoin. Now, an important detail on that treasury funding. It's not just a blank check, right? The release of those 96 million ADA is milestone-based. That means that the devs can't just take the money and throw a long year party in Vegas, right? They have to hit certain targets and prove progress to keep getting the funds. This is great because it keeps everyone accountable and ensures that the money goes to the actual development work. Now, all of this, the institutional inflows, the potential ETFs, the big treasury funded push, for development, gave me a second big reason to feel bullish on ADA. It's kind of like getting validation from both Wall Street and the Cardano community all at the same time. So when you see traditional finance and crypto community governance both vote yes on something, you kind of know that there is momentum. Now, before I get too carried away imagining ADA's price with 2 more zeros at the end, let me kind of slip in a sensible hat, at least put on the sensible hat for just a moment here. And this one might just shock you, but I'm not a financial advisor and nothing in this video is financial advice. Cryptocurrencies are highly volatile and you could lose all of the money that you invest. You should always do your own research and consult a qualified professional. After all, your investments are entirely your own responsibility and you should know that nothing is ever guaranteed when it comes to investing. Neither I, this channel, nor YouTube are liable for any losses, and this video today is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Alright, right, so I had to get that out of the way. You know how it goes, right? Got to cover the basis. Now, where was I? Yes, the final clue. And this one kind of sent me down the deepest rabbit hole of all. So, clue number 3. And this one took me completely by surprise and kind of blew my mind a bit. Right? It's all about Bitcoin. Yes, that Bitcoin, and how it's starting to play nicely with Cardano in a way that I didn't think was possible. Now, I came across a story, a shout out to a friend on Twitter who DM'd me to me about a project called Bitcoin OS, BOS. Right? The headline was something like "First Bridgeless Bitcoin Transfer to Cardano Achieved." Bridgeless, right? So to Bitcoin to Cardano. Now, my skeptic meter kind of went off the charts here. I had to dig in to see what was actually real here. And here's the deal. Bitcoin OS managed to do a non-custodial bridgeless transfer of one whole Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network to the Cardano network, and then back to the Bitcoin network. No centralized exchange, no third-party custodian holding the funds, no typical bridge. That was the hacked, or that could be hacked or rug pulled at some point. Just pure cryptographic magic. Now, they essentially created an xBTC token on Cardano that represented a Bitcoin and moved that around on Cardano and then redeemed it back for a real Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network. All of it was backed by zero knowledge proofs to ensure that it was legit. Now, if you're not super technical, you've got to think about it like teleporting a Bitcoin onto or into Cardano's world and then back to Bitcoin's world with no one in the middle holding it for you, right? It's pretty wild. Now, this is huge for a bunch of different reasons. For one, it shows that Cardano's architecture has some unique advantages. Right? Cardano uses something called the extended UTXO model, which, without getting too deep into the weeds, is kind of like Bitcoin's transaction model, but, I guess souped up to handle smart contracts. Now, that similarity is kind of what makes it surprisingly compatible with Bitcoin. Now, they basically kind of speak the same language in terms of how transactions are structured. So you can do tricks like this xBTC thing more easily. Now, in contrast, doing something like this, Bitcoin and let's say Ethereum, which uses a different accounting-based model, is a lot harder without trustless bridges. Also, this xBTC magic is part of a bigger system dubbed BitSNARK. Now, the name sounds a little bit like a Pokemon, but I swear it's serious tech. And there are some other protocols in play here with names like BitVMX and Cardano, that I've kind of seen thrown around too. Now, the details kind of get real geeky, but the takeaway is that people are figuring out ways to bring Bitcoin's value, even the kind of quirky features like ordinals, those NFT-like, inceptions on Satoshis, into the Cardano ecosystem. Now, in a recent interview, and I think it was one of on a podcast or YouTube or something, I can't really recall exactly, but Charles Hoskinson himself talked about this bridging of Cardano and Bitcoin, right? And it kind of made rather bold comparisons. And he said something along the lines of, look, Bitcoin might give you a 10x return if you're lucky, but Cardano could potentially give you 100x, maybe even 1000x. Now, when I heard that, I had to kind of rewind and make sure that he wasn't hallucinating, or I was hallucinating, right? 100 to 1000 times increase. That's kind of the thing that would normally sound like pure hopium if it wasn't coming from the founder of the project. Now, obviously, take that with a large grain of salt, right? Hoskinson is super bullish on his own baby, right? As he should be. But it kind of shows the level of confidence and ambition behind these developments. The point is that Cardano is not just sitting doing one thing, right? Sitting still doing one thing, I should say. It's actually reaching out. It's connecting with the biggest crypto in the game, Bitcoin, and carving out a niche where it can shine. If Cardano can ride some of Bitcoin's coattails while offering features that Bitcoin doesn't have, like smart contracts, DeFi, privacy on midnight, etc., then that could actually be a recipe for some serious growth. Now, it's almost like Cardano is building bridges or teleporters to every other kind of big crypto ecosystem. First, this midnight airdrop touches 8 different chains. Now Bitcoin interoperability. What's next? Maybe an Ethereum handshake? Actually, they're actually working on that one too, by the way, with sidechains and whatnot, but I digress. Anyway, by the time I had finished reading about Bitcoin to Cardano transfer, it kind of felt like something had clicked. You know, that kind of scene in the detective movie where all the clues come together in the detective's mind. I had one of those moments, right? All the pieces, the midnight sidechain, the institutional investment, the Bitcoin interoperability, they all pointed to the fact that Cardano isn't just a sleepy altcoin sitting in the corner. It's actively evolving, expanding, and building up momentum below the surface. And so here I am, sitting in the dark at 2 a.m., you know, from being on the verge of panic selling ADA to feeling actually excited about its future. Talk about an absolute roller coaster of emotions. But that's crypto for you, an industry that can make you feel like you have split personalities sometimes. One minute you're convinced everything is going to zero, and the next you're Googling Lambo dealerships near me, just in case. Now, let's bring this home with a little bit of reflection and what I'm doing about it. Spoiler, I didn't sell my ADA. So after putting together these 3 clues, I'm looking at Cardano with fresh eyes. The short-term price action, that dip in the 70s, is still a little bit nerve-wracking. Don't get me wrong. ADA's got this stubborn resistance at around 75 to 80 cents, for example, right? And it keeps bumping its head against it. Now, it kind of needs to clear roughly 92 cents for anyone to really yell breakout at this point. And that's what technical analysts say, because breaking 92 cents could actually open the door to a sprint towards $1.50 or even higher. I know, it sounds optimistic given where we are right now, but considering everything that we've talked about, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, does it? Stranger things have happened in crypto, that is for sure. Now, that derivatives trader that I mentioned earlier, maybe they caught wind of all of this. Maybe the smart money was positioning for an ADA move while retail was panic selling. It wouldn't be the first time that insiders or well-informed people traded ahead of the news, right? The raising and rising kind of TVL suggests more users are finding value in Cardano's ecosystem right now. Not someday later, but now. And if midnight brings even more DeFi action, that TVL number could skyrocket. Now, institutional investors easing in with tens of millions of dollars, a potential ETF on the horizon, those aren't things that pump your bags overnight, but they are laying the foundation. It's slow, it's quiet, but the tide is coming in. Now, you don't notice the water rising until your beach towel is, well, soaked. Now, I feel like ADA's story in 2025 is a lot about the tide coming in. Now, I'm not here to sugarcoat things either. Cardano, just like any other cryptocurrency, could face setbacks. Maybe the midnight launch has bugs. Maybe the SEC delays all crypto ETFs. Maybe the market just turns bearish as heck, right? All of that can happen, right? And that is why I gave you that big fat disclaimer earlier, right? I'm keeping myself grounded. But as of now, I've decided to hold on to my ADA bag. In fact, I might even accumulate a little bit more if prices stay attractive at these fundamentals keep trending in the way that they are, right? In that right direction. And if I do, I'll probably also do it on Kraken Pro since they have low fees. And full disclosure, guys, I have an affiliate link to Kraken Pro and it is down in the description below. It supports the channel at no extra cost to yourself. So if you use it and you're looking for an exchange, if not, don't worry about it. Just make sure that you're using a platform that you trust. And I'm also going to be hanging out in that Discord server, right? I mentioned it earlier, right? Chatting with others who are following these developments. It's fun to be a part of a community during these times, right? Because one person can't catch absolutely everything, right? And honestly, even if ADA doesn't moon tomorrow, at least I know that I'm still in this. Having conviction based on research beats holding a coin just because number go up, at least in my opinion. So here is where I'm going to wrap up my little midnight adventure. I went from almost panic selling ADA to falling down a Cardano rabbit hole of research. And I came out the other side with a story to tell and my ADA still in my wallet. Will ADA hit $1 in the next couple of weeks or months? I don't have a crystal ball, but I now see a path that makes it plausible. And if things like midnight or a Cardano ETF come to fruition, then Who knows how high this thing could go in the long run? I'm not saying 1000x like Hoskinson. I'll keep our feet firmly grounded here. But hey, I've been surprised before. And if you've watched this far, then thank you for coming along on this journey with me. I hope my late night research rabbit hole gave you some insights, or at least a little bit of entertainment. If you have your own take on Cardano's prospects or something that you think I've missed that's important, drop a comment down below or hop into the free Discord server and let's chat. Right, this space moves fast and none of us have all of the answers. Now, if you've enjoyed this adventure, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.